Jackie's 22nd podcast, March 29th, 2025, and we're rolling.
Hello, my name is Jackie Garinger McDermott, and we're recording live from the English Valley History Center in North English, Iowa. This diary was written by Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, whose nickname was Libby Wade. We are now reading about September of 1946. When we are finished with a couple of weeks of the diary, I will give you some news and features from the History Center. First thing I wanted to show you today was a picture I found on the wall. This right here is the locker building, and Libby's house is right behind it. And as you can see, on the second floor is the IOOF Hall, International Order of Odd Fellows, and that's where her Rebecca Lodge was held every week. Just thought you'd be interested in that. September 16th, 1946. Dr. Schulenthaler stopped and examined my teeth. I'm to go tomorrow and get one pulled. Mr. Hamilton moved his trailer away from Newberry's. Ross Mahannah died at St. Luke's at 2:20 this p.m. I washed in the p.m. Nice and warm today. Dr. A.C. Schulenthaler was the local dentist in North English, and he was still the dentist here when I was growing up. At that time, the Schulenthalers lived across the street from the Old Catholic Church, which was later Best Furniture and Funeral Service, where our board member Dan Best lives today. Dr. Schulenthaler made a house call for Libby. I'm guessing that maybe Libby's neighbors, the Newberrys, also had a space for someone like Mr. Hamilton to move a trailer to live in on their property. I know they rented rooms. Russell Ross Mahannah, who passed away, was a businessman uptown, and we found his obituary. He had been ill for several weeks. His father, Curtis Dow Mahannah, started the business in 1886, specializing in furniture and undertaking and photography. And Ross took over the business when his father died. Here's a picture of Ross. Ross had worked on Main Street for over 40 years. His parents had 12 children. Here is a picture of Curtis and Eva Mahannah and family. Ross's grandfather was Clark Mahannah. And here's a picture of Clark. And we also have a big picture of Clark hanging here in the center. And here it is. It's a beautiful picture. They got it out of the Christian church. And I wanted to show you where the furniture store was at. It's the second building here that says Mahannah on it. At that time, there were 4 buildings on that end of the block. Now it's the second one in. Clark Mahannah's wife was Sophia Weir Mahannah, and she and Clark had come to North English in 1857 in a covered wagon. The Mahannah family were longtime members of the North English Christian Church. Ross Mahannah's son-in-law, Jack Ross, has been taking care of the business since Ross Mahannah became ill, according to the North English newspaper this week. September 17th, 1946, a very nice day. I went to the dentist at 8 a.m., had a tooth pulled. Jenny came up to the office and I went home with her. We went to South English. Lita went too. Libby lived close enough to walk uptown to the dentist, but then Jenny came in the car and took her with her. Lita Lavelle was a friend of theirs. She was the sister of my teacher, Doris Reese. September 18th, 1946. Cleaned the ice box, made a little jam, then went upstairs and emptied 100 pounds of flour into the flour bin. My jaw is a little sore, but not bad. Had a letter from Anna. Mylan had his tonsils out Saturday. Was back in school on Monday. Even went to a show on Sunday. Lucky guy to get along so well. The ice box was an old-fashioned name for the refrigerator. Libby likely had a little bit of fruit left that she wanted to preserve into jam. She was not one to waste anything. The family bought flour 100 pounds at a time. In those days, almost all meals were eaten at home. And of course, Libby needs to make sweet treats for the many visitors to her home. Anna Cray, who is right here in this picture, was Libby's daughter. She was her only daughter. She lived in Texas with her husband and 3 sons. Here's the boys. And Mylon Richard Cray was the oldest one. He was home after serving in the Navy, and he had started college. September 19th, 1946. Another nice day. Just right for the corn. Evelyn was here a while last evening. She got her book, Dark Wood. Ross Mahannah's funeral is to be this p.m. Russell took his car and some of the Mahannah family. Maud was here. It rained in the evening and in the night. I had oysters for supper, our first this year, 80 cents a pint. Living in a farming community, Libby is concerned about how the corn crop is doing. Evelyn Kurtz is Libby's young married granddaughter. She's right here in this picture. She had loaned her grandmother a new book to read. Maud, who's in this picture right here, is the wife of Libby's nephew, Ray Claypool, and she's also Libby's close friend. Russell is Libby's 39-year-old son, who lives with her, and he has a brand new car. People often ask him to drive, and this time, he is helping the Mahannah family with transportation to the cemetery and or the funeral. All of the businesses are closed for Ross Mahannah's funeral, so Russell is able to leave work for help. For those of you who are wondering, Ross Mahannah was not the grandfather of Ron Mahannah and Rodney Mahannah, who graduated from EV. His brother Ernest was their grandfather. We will have more about that family when we do the story on Graham Hardware. September 20th, 1946. Cool, 48 degrees this morning. Russell went early to weigh a load of turkeys, had breakfast in town. President Truman asked Secretary of Commerce Henry Wallace to resign at 10 a.m. Baked bread today, first for a long time. Bertie and Mary R. were here. Football game with Westchester. North English was defeated. Russell worked uptown at the Home Lumber Company, and they had a scale. I had forgotten about that and asked my brother Lou to help me remember, as he worked there that last year that Bruce Warner was manager, and then for John Hall and Lynn Moffat when they bought the lumberyard. The scale was a platform out front where trucks could be weighed, and Lou said the person that ran the scale needed to be certified to run the scale. There were several restaurants uptown where Russell could eat breakfast, unlike today. But hey, you could come to the History Center for a cup of coffee and some sweet treats and to watch me do a live broadcast. Henry Wallace, who the Wallace Building is named for, in Des Moines, was too liberal for President Truman, and he fired him when he made a conciliatory speech about Russia. Bertie Mahannah McKinstry and Mary Regsetter were good friends of Libby who came over to visit her today. The high school football game was written up in the newspaper. Westchester, first foe of Formanek. He coached the Bear 11, it says. We looked for a picture of the football team from 1946, and we found the team picture for basketball the next spring, which has some of the players in it. In the back row is Coach Formanek over here, and he was coach of both sports. And over here is Kenny Donahue right there. And in the front, we have Charles Schulenthaler, the son of the dentist, is the second one in. And then Don Johnson, whose parents own the locker. Bill Fobert, who will be featuring next week. Let's see. Bob King, Dave Green, and on the end is George or Sonny Wine, who was later the sports information director at the University of Iowa. Other players who were not out for basketball, but who were out for football, were Keith Weber, Arlen McCombs, Dial Dennison, Tom Tedrow, Glenn Martin, Bill Ely, Laverne or Squirt Wilkerson, Wendell Newberry, and Jack Doolin. We do not have a 1947 class composite picture, or I would use it. If anyone has one, could they please donate a copy to the History Center? September 21st, 1946. Nanny Smart was taken to the Sigourney Hospital. Rusty Wilkinson was here in the AM. In the PM, Maud and Mary Newhouse, Hattie, and Mary Regsager stopped. Also Ruth Mall and Miss Naylor. Mrs. Jasper Huff and children were here a while too. Word came that Lawrence McMickle had died in CR today. Alta was here in the evening. We had a nice visit. Nanny Smart was the sister of Libby's sister-in-law, Minnie Claypool, and Nanny lived with Minnie. Libby had a lot of friends over today. Here's a picture of Rusty Wilkinson. This is in later years, of course. The women were likely sewing and visiting. John Lawrence McMickle and his family had moved to Cedar Rapids. They lived in North English from 1918 to 1945. Their children were Earl, Edsel, Elbert, Ethel, Eleanor, and Ethel. Lawrence McMickle's son, Edsel McMickle, was a firefighter in Cedar Rapids for 49 years and was the Cedar Rapids fire chief for 20 years. Lawrence McMickle's wife was Louise or Louie Wymore, so her sisters were local residents, Opal Wymore McNally Mason and Marie Wymore Cassidy. And the person who came in the evening was Alta Berry, and she was Libby's sister-in-law, the sister of Libby's husband, Bert Wade. September 22nd, 1946. Cloudy and cool. Russell and George Hornick went squirrel hunting in the morning. Went out driving with Jenny and Harold. Virginia Irwin called from Garrison. Her father, Hayes Hinkle, died this morning. Funeral in Vinton, Tuesday p.m. Jenny is Libby's daughter-in-law, the wife of her oldest son, Wayne or Perky Wade. Harold was Libby's grandson, who was just home from serving in the Navy. There's Harold Stubb Wade and Walter Bud Wade, his brother. Hayes Hinkle was a relative on Libby's mother's side of the family. Libby's mother's name was Anne Mariah Hinkle Claypool. And here's her picture right here, and she's also my great-great-grandmother. I think there are probably still Hinkle relatives in the Garrison, Iowa area today, but I don't know anyone who has contact with any of the Hinkle family these days. September 23rd, 1946. I washed this morning. Lena and Jenny were here a while in the PM. We talked about going to the funeral at Vinton, but I don't see how we can. A big rain up there last evening caused some roads to be closed. All are so busy, and I'm not fit to go, so I suppose we won't. September 24th, 1946. But we did. Russell saw Leighton uptown and arranged for Leighton to take Russell's car and me. So Leighton and Gertie and Ray and I went. So happy we did. Poor Hayes died in the night. Only his son Wayne was at home. His wife had gone to Cedar Rapids to her daughters. Russell has a new car that is good enough to take out of town, so it was often used by others also. Leighton, or Happy Claypool, who's right here in this picture, and his wife Gertie, and this picture from 1933 is on page 424 of Dave Jackson's Hinkletown book. Happy is holding Marilyn, his daughter, and in the front is Lloyd, and over on this side is Harold Claypool. Jean and Winston and Leighton Lee were not born yet in that picture. Ray Claypool, who went with them, is Libby's nephew, and here is Ray here and Leighton there. They are brothers, and they are the sons of Libby's brother, Verner Claypool. Libby really values her family connections, so I'm sure this trip meant a great deal to her. September 25th, 1946. Another nice day. I'm not as tired as I thought I'd be. I went to lodge last night, too. Took care of some grapes and melons that Bertha Ballard gave me. Ironed in the p.m. Mrs. Schollenthaler brought some tea towels for me to hem. Pretty tired tonight. Rebecca Lodge was a group that Libby belonged to, and their meetings were held upstairs in the last building on Main Street, just a half a block from Libby's house. Bertha Ballard was an old friend from when Libby lived out at Green Valley in her younger years, and she had sent produce to Libby. Mrs. Schollenthaler is the dentist's wife, and she probably knows that Libby is a wonderful seamstress. September 26, 1946. I'm to go to the dentist this morning. I went and had my teeth ground smooth and one filled. Went to Ina's. She looked so bad. Gave me some sweet potatoes. Saw Marion Long Wade. Belva and Michael were here in the p.m., and Marion and 3 children. Mrs. Bolts, Mary R., and Maud were here in the p.m. Marion's birthday is September 22nd. Anna's and Marion's girl, the 2nd on the 24th. Ina McKinstry Claypool was the elderly widow of Libby's cousin, Wallace Claypool. She lives up across Main Street from Libby's and had a big garden, and she often gives the produce to Libby. Marion Long Wade, picture of her right here, is Libby's great niece, the daughter of her niece, Louise Claypool Long. And Louise Claypool Long was my Grandma Geringer's sister. Marion is married to a relative on Libby's side of the family, Francis or Pete Wade, who happens to be the brother of Max Wade from North English, the father of my faithful listener, Marcia Wade Vinson. Marion Long's 3 children at that time would have been Karen Long, Margaret Louise or Mickey Long, and John Francis Long. Belva Yost that came over is Libby's oldest granddaughter, and her baby Michael is known as Mick Yost. Visitors at Libby's this afternoon were Libby's friends, Elizabeth or Lizzie Bolts, Mary Regsager, and Maud Claypool, the wife of her nephew Ray Claypool. Libby likes to remember birthdays and notices that her great niece, Marion Wade, has a birthday on September 22nd. I think Libby is saying that the birthday of her second deceased infant granddaughter, Anna and Richard's child, Leona Vay Cray, who passed away in 1930, also had the same birthday as Marion's second daughter, Mickey Long, who was born on September 28th. September 27th, 1946. A letter from Anna. Warm and windy, just what the corn needs. I took up some of my geraniums. Hattie and Maud were here in the p.m. I went over to visit Mrs. Lockridge in the p.m. A storm came up, and I came home. Mary Newhouse was here. Benton Geringer was here in the p.m. Just got home today. Since geraniums don't last over the winter in Iowa, Libby was digging them up and likely putting them in the basement for the winter. Hattie Newberry Killian and Maud Claypool and Mary Newhouse were her friends, and Mrs. Lockridge was a neighbor. Benton Geringer is her great-nephew, my Uncle Doc Geringer. Doc had been served many months in the Pacific Theater in World War II, specifically in Japan. He was now home from the service and went down to see his great-aunt, who they all thought a lot of. September 28th, 1946. Lots cooler and cloudy today. Dean was here at noon. Hattie was over in the p.m. Norman Bishop came home with Russell. He was here for supper. He is married. His wife's name is Betty Jane Midkiff. He has gone over to his mother at Kinross now. We had oysters for supper. Norman was 23 in April. Cecil Dean, or Dean Claypool, is Libby's youngest nephew on the Claypool side, the son of her brother Vernie and his wife Minnie Claypool. Dean is 45 years old and lives with his widowed mother, Minnie Claypool, and is a veteran of World War II. The Bishop family were old neighbors. September 29th, 1946. Bert's birthday, his 72nd. This has been a cold day. Russell went squirrel hunting, got 2. Suzanne was here in the PM. Jenny and Frida came. Had trouble with the oil burner. Was okay after Russell fixed it. Evelyn sent me 2 books, The Robe and The Black Rose. Albert Otis, or Bert Wade, was Libby's late husband. Russell's squirrels will be eaten as the family makes use of hunting and fishing to add to their food supply. Suzanne Kurtz was Libby's oldest great-granddaughter, and she often walks up from her grandparents' house when she is in town. Jenny is her grandmother, and Frida is the wife of Walter or Bud Wade. There's a picture of Frida, so she's Jenny's daughter-in-law. Frida was a longtime teacher at EV. Fuel oil was burned in stoves before natural gas was available. September 30th, 1946. Bert Claypool is 65. John's birthday, also his 75th. Harley Carter's birthday. I washed and baked bread. Gave Belva a pan of biscuits. Russell fell down the stairs at the home lumber company and hurt his knee. Pretty sore. I'm awfully tired. Byron Hill brought a coconut in the hall. I'd never seen one before. They just came home from Florida on Friday. Bert Claypool was the son of Libby's cousin Wallace Claypool. Harley Carter, who was known as Pat Carter, was 33 years old today. He was a friend from the Yankee Point area. And here's a picture of Harley Carter and his wife and family. And over here is his son Arnold and family. John Forsey Claypool was who she was talking about, that would have been 75 years old today. He was Libby's older brother, and he was 3 years older than her. There's this picture. He was killed tragically in a farm accident in 1913 when he was 42 years old. He was sawing with wood with an engine with a belting apparatus when he received internal injuries and badly broken legs, according to the newspaper article I found. He passed away in a hospital in Iowa City a few days later, suffering from tetanus, which is something that is highly preventable today by getting a tetanus shot when you're injured. John was living in the home of his and Libby's father, Jonathan Claypool, as did Libby and her 4 children at the time, so it was a real blow to lose him. That is the end of the diary portion for this week. A lot of work goes on behind the scenes to keep the History Center operating. This includes cataloging accessions, creating displays, coordinating and preparing for monthly programs, keeping up with the social media, finances, cleaning, maintenance, and providing treats for programs. There's a whole lot more activity that supports the center operations, and it's largely contributed to the time and effort by the Board of Directors. The History Center Board is composed of Dave Jackson, President, Scott Romine, Vice President, Bonnie Romine, Secretary, Don Banning, Treasurer, and Directors Carolyn Elwood, Shelley Gerard, Alan Ackerman, and Dan Best. Please send donations to the English Valleys History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa 52316. Our featured story this week is the Green Valley Fair. Patty Fobert had asked me to research this topic because she was interested in learning more about her father, Bill Gerard, taking part in races at Green Valley. I was not able to find that specifically, but I was able to find out a little bit about the large summertime celebrations that took place at Green Valley starting in the 1800s and continuing on until the start of World War II. Where was Green Valley, you might ask? Approximately 5 miles east of North English if you head out to paving east of the sewer plant. Dave Jackson has a nice article in the Hinkletown book starting on page 638 with research he did on the topic. In the 1870s or 1880s, the Green Valley Fair started as an annual extravaganza, including patriotic and political speeches, bands, and a grand picnic held on the island, which was a large oval piece of land where the English River circled back on itself just east of the Green Valley Bridge, which is south of the present-day highway. Lucy Hudson Whitmore described these events in her writings. Here are some clippings that Dave Jackson found from the early days of the event. Here are articles from 1906 and 1908. And here's the 1906 one. Here's the picture. Dave took these to Iowa City and made them bigger. The Old Settlers Picnic at Green Valley was well attended, people coming from all the surrounding towns. Quite a drawing card for the politicians, too. A parade in the forenoon was the only diversion for the small boy. In the afternoon, a program was rendered consisting of music and speeches. In a few well-chosen words, the chairman, E.D. Baird, introduced Reverend J.M. Van Kirk of Kinross and County Attorney Wallace of Williamsburg, who delivered addresses. The above was interspersed with selections by the North English Band. Altogether, everything was enjoyable as had been anticipated. And then in 1908, the Old Settlers Picnic at Green Valley was well attended. Fred E. White and J.C. Hannah and David Brandt did the speaking. The usual variety of games were present. The ball game ended in a victory for Parnell. Sliver Moffett, who was married to Martha Dennison, I went too far. Over time, the event grew more elaborate and became a 2-day event with baseball and softball tournaments, foot races, a shooting gallery, boxing and wrestling matches, horse racing, platform dances with out-of-town dance bands, amusement rides, fireworks, and even airplane rides in the 1930s. When I was a kid, after the Green Valley Fair was a thing of the past, it was very common for this area to flood extensively. In fact, our parents would take us out to view the floodwaters. So I can believe they sometimes had to postpone or move the Green Valley Fair due to high water. Dave Jackson interviewed Wayne or Sliver Moffett, who was married to Martha Dennison, and they lived on their farm at Green Valley for 66 years. They were the parents of Robert Moffett, who was married to Gay Hedrick Moffett. Sliver remembered using a drag to make the track for the horse races and creating a landing spot for the airplanes and a place for the amusement train ride to run. Here's a picture of Sliver Moffett with his father, William Moffett. William Moffett is on this side over here, and then Sliver is the next one in, and their brother Dean and sister Arlene. Great-grandson Trent Forrest believes this picture was taken in front of their barn at Green Valley. Here are some notices that Dave found about the fair in later years. In 1936, let's start with 1931, that's first. And this one says, the people of Green Valley Community will hold a big day of races on Saturday, August 15th, 1 mile west of Green Valley on the Raleigh Long Farm. There is a 1/2 mile track on this farm which will be suitable for the horse, pony, and mule races. A pulling contest for the light and heavy horse teams and mule teams and potato races will be part of the day's entertainment. Those entering the pulling contest are asked to come early. There's no entrance fee charge. Lunch will be served on the grounds where there's plenty of shade. We think this place was straight south of Pearsall Cemetery, down where Ham Hans lived on the flat. The 1936 program is right here. And then the 1937 program features a horse race between two good fast horses with a side purse. So I'm guessing maybe there was some betting going on there. The horses were Sparky, owned by Bill McCann, and Susie, owned by Glenn or Toonie Reed. This event and one similar to it might have been the one that Patty's father, Bill Gerard, was involved in. She said that Twyla Gerard and Lana James had shown her a picture of it at one time. We did find an article that said that Donald Netzer Sr. broke his leg when one of the horses took off for home after rounding a corner on the racetrack. And this one from 1937 says, Saturday night and Sunday, September 10th and 11th. Kitten Ball, 10:30 a.m. The Cedar Rapids Maccabees versus Hills. These two teams are the fastest in Iowa and will furnish plenty of entertainment for kitten ball fans in this territory. An amateur contest. The first prize was $5, second prize was $3, the third prize was $2. Baseball at 1:30, the Harper Independence versus Hayesville. A horse racing match, and that was the two between Bill McCain and Toonie Reed's horses. And then they had boxing and wrestling. And one of those participants was Milo Flooring, Bush Yoder, Les Butterbaugh, Andy Smith, Indian Buck, Ray Knopfsinger, Russ Hacker, and Kid Gaddis, weighing 163 from Muscatine. And at night, they had dancing, old-time and modern dancing, with Freddie Perkins and his Colored Rhythm Rascals. Admission, adults 25 cents, and children 10 cents. If you have any pictures of anything that you'd like to share, or anyone we have featured, of anyone on an upcoming program, please let me know. I want to show you something neat that I found when I was researching this week's story on the Mahannah family. I knew that Mahannah's had a photo studio, and I find this picture interesting. This woman is Curtis Dow, or C.D. Mahannah's grandmother, Mary Wack Weir Stem. She had come to North English to live with his parents, Clark and Sophia Mahannah, after her second husband died. She was born in 1804 and died in 1895. So this picture was before that, and she lived to be 90 years old. The first person ever photographed was more than 50 years older than her, but she was born really close to the 1700s, so I thought that was a really cool picture. A little more on Ross Mahannah. Since I learned so much about him from his obituary this week, I wanted to share a little more of it. I knew, the reason I didn't know much about him, even though he only died 9 years before I was born, is that he had 4 daughters. Marjorie, the wife of J.B. Ross, Corinne, who later became the wife of Robert Goodlove, and Jean, the wife of Francis' ex-wife, and Betty Jane, who became the wife of Menzo Hatter. And they all lived away from here after he was gone. He was only 62 years old when he passed away from an illness of only a few weeks, something internally wrong. He was especially close to young children, and many inquired about him when he was sick, quote, expressing hope for his recovery, unwilling to think otherwise. He was also survived by his wife, the former Addie Deer from Williamsburg, and a 4-year-old grandson. The grandson's name was John Bond Ross III. Ross Mahannah was a sports enthusiast with an amazing facility to remember the scores of all the games, both football and baseball, and he was a human scoreboard, someone had called him. Ross was described as very civic-minded, and he had been a member of the North English Christian Church, the Board of Education, was the county chairman of the Republican Party, chancellor commander of the Knights of Pythias, and worshipful master of the local Masonic Lodge. He was very thoughtful, caring, and kind, and professional as an undertaker. Quote, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die. I received a packet of pictures from Louise Ballard Davis. In this packet of pictures were some pictures to go along with my story on influenza in 1918 and how hard it was on the North English community. Here's a picture of her grandfather, Herbert Benton Carter, and he's on this side. He died at age 28 in 1918. He left his widow, Lila Hardy Carter, and their 2 children, Viola, whose nickname was Mickey, and Harley, whose nickname was Pat. Lila Hardy Carter was married to S.S. or Venus Cobb and was known as Lila Cobb. Her children were Mickey, who married Ralph Ballard, who was the mother of Louise Davis and Lindine Ballard, and Pat Carter, who married Arlene Hall and was the father of Arnold Carter from North English, Carolyn and Karma and Roger Carter. Later, Lila later had Milo Cobb, who was married to Nellie Van Dee, and Glenn Cobb, who was married to Hazel Wade. Lila Cobb was also the stepmother to Estelle or Shorty Cobb, Edgar or Ty Cobb, Ray Cobb, and Eileen Cobb Wallace. I heard from Mark Claypool this week. Jackie, it is amazing how big our family is. and the way you portray the memories is incredible. Thank you for your dedication. I also heard from several of my listeners who say they watch regularly. Rita Wade from New York City, Gail Weber from Sigourney, and her husband Andy Weber, Susan Elwood from North English, Sharon Hagen from Williamsburg, and Cindy Weber from Kyoto. I also saw Carla Burdock from Keswick, who is interested in history, and she said she listens to my podcast to go to sleep. I do that too with Pastor Vince Homan's Bible Talks. Connie Brubaker wrote and says she so enjoys the work I put into my podcast. I found a new friend and listener this week, the granddaughter of Dempsey Wade, Heather Wade Gibson. She wants to come to North English on a Saturday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. to watch a broadcast. The English Valley's History Center is at 108 North Main Street, just across the street and a little south of the grocery store. The coffee is on and there are always sweet treats. Several members of the History Center board are present and we can ask questions, answer questions, show you exhibits, etc. I also talked to Kathy Morrison-Netzer, who gives tours at the Williamsburg Historical Commission. Kathy grew up on Smoky Row, or we call it East Washington Street now, in North English, where I lived until I was 8 years old. Kathy also wants to come watch a broadcast. We have plenty of chairs set up, and my brother Lou Geringer, Alan Ackerman, and Dan Best are usually present to be the audience each week. A story we are working on with Kathy is on the Texaco fire. If you have any memories of the Texaco fire, I'd like you to get a hold of me with them. I would also like to point out these two books that we have here that were compiled by Ron Van Berkem, a former member of the English Valley History Center Board who has moved to Wisconsin. The first is the football record book for football information and pictures about English Valley school teams. And the second is the history of English Valley's girls basketball. And this one is especially interesting this week because it has pictures of the tournament team in it. And he did several interviews with the players of the 1953 state tournament team that I mentioned last week in my broadcast. And there are also lots of newspaper clippings on the 1977 team. Carrie Mahannah Boone also commented on her Backtracks post on the English Valley History Center page and shared a picture of Clark Mahannah, who was Ross Mahannah's grandfather. I did know a little bit about Clark and Sophia Mahannah because I used to correspond with Carolyn Harmon Scott from California years ago about Emma Mahannah Pettibone, one of Clark's girls who married into our Carter Pettibone family. I remember from talking to Carolyn that the Mahannah house was the one we called Myborg's house, or the house where Marcia Vinson raised her kids, Brandy Claypool and Garen Claypool, the big house on the north side of the street on West Clark across from Kirkpatrick's house. I would also like to mention that the next English Valley's alumni luncheon at Bryant's and Williamsburg Mall will be held at 11:30 on April 28th. Please call out Alice Stramer or Linda Carter for reservations. Tomorrow afternoon is the program at the History Center. Iowa Scenic Views by the Foot with Tyler Sullivan. It starts at 2 p.m. at the History Center. We are also interested in learning about historical English Valley's items that you might wish to donate to the History Center. Please contact Dave Jackson, Scott Romine, or any board member to donate. See you next week.